This dog wanted to join the army, but it was stopped by the gatekeeper. Seeing that a large group of soldiers was heading to the camp, the dog pretended to leave, but in reality, it was trying to find another way in. In the chaos, it accidentally knocked over a soldier. The soldier quickly told it to stay quiet and leave, but what happened next immediately won everyone over. The dog barked, catching the attention of the drill sergeant. When the sergeant asked who the dog's owner was, the dog glanced at the soldier beside him. The dog's cleverness impressed the sergeant, but the real surprise was yet to come. At that moment, the sergeant issued an attention command.
Dismiss!
And just like that, the dog was allowed to stay in the army, breaking all the rules. During meal times, it was treated the same as the other soldiers, enjoying equal privileges. At night, it even slept with David. In the days that followed, the dog trained with David every day, and the bond between them grew stronger. Like close comrades, the dog's performance even outshone some of the soldiers. But the next day, the colonel discovered the dog. He didn't allow pets in the camp, but in the very next moment, the dog used its skills to prove it was a part of the team. David named his little companion Stabby, but like all good times, this happiness was short-lived. One day, the colonel decided that the well-trained army had to head to the battlefield. Stabby, however, had to stay behind to accompany the next batch of soldiers. David was unsettled by the news, knowing the cruelty of the battlefield, but even more than that, he feared being separated from Stabby. That night, he packed his things slowly, cherishing every second with Stabby. But Stabby, too, wasn't ready to let go. It crawled into David's luggage, making soft whimpers to express its reluctance. But the moment of parting was inevitable. Before leaving, David gave Stabby a collar and handed it over to the chef. Although David was filled with sorrow, he knew he had to accept the reality. Watching David's fading figure, Stabby stood motionless, too afraid to move, worried that David would come back and not find it. It slowly lowered its head, not understanding what it had done wrong. Perhaps it was because it had been abandoned before. At that moment, Stabby refused to give up. It broke free from its restraints and followed David's scent, desperately rushing towards the train that could change its fate. But when it reached the port, Stabby finally saw David, only to find soldiers blocking the way. It quickly hid inside some supplies, and made its way onto the ship unnoticed. In the crowded room, Stabby followed the scent and found David. It jumped up onto David in excitement. David was amazed by Stabby's intelligence, but this wasn't the time for celebration. They had to find a safe place for Stabby, but just as they were about to move, they encountered an officer. Stabby immediately saluted the officer, and out of politeness, the officer responded. When the officer learned that Stabby had made its way onto the warship alone, he was deeply impressed by Stabby's cleverness. With yet another impressive performance, Stabby won the officer's admiration. A friend engraved Stabby's name on its collar, and at that moment, Stabby officially became a soldier, ready to fight alongside them. A few days later, they arrived at the battlefield. Seeing the endless explosions, Stabby, who had never seen combat before, was understandably frightened. But when it saw a soldier injured in the dirt, it immediately rushed forward to help, playing a vital role in rescue operations. Because of Stabby's unique abilities, David and his team were noticed by the local captain, who formed a frontline reconnaissance team. One day, they discovered that the enemy was preparing chemical bombs. The team hurried to warn their